remember that they are changing my voice. I am not gay. This video is about 10 things that people must agree on to do the best they can do when it comes to addressing the major problems in America and in the world. Okay, so in the future, there is no hope. People shouldn't reproduce, but what's the best they can do? Number one, we must agree that the nation should not commit to evil and it should not accept being evil. Right? Society, the nation, what have you, it should not commit to evil and it should not accept being evil. Point number two, we must agree that we should discuss the problems that are occurring, including the economy. And they must admit that they've been making it more confusing and complicated than it has to be on purpose. Okay, so people have to be honest about what is evil. They have to be honest about the economy. You know, things like tax rates, things like cost-effective spending, what have you. Point number three, we must agree that the West and other developed nations have really oppressed underdeveloped nations, and that is the main reason why many people want to migrate to America. Their proxy leaders and corporate agendas and corporate groups, as well as other so-called, ideas such as having interests abroad, have caused a lot of harm. For example, if a group of people colonized another people and took all their things and put it inside of a fort, if the people that was robbed tried to break in and take back some of what was taken from them, regardless of the oppressor's laws, who would be more in the wrong? If people cannot even do the basic math and live by it, then they are dumb and evil. So let me help you understand that example. Say that, the colonists landed and they went to America, right? And they landed and they took stuff from Native Americans, right? And they started hoarding their food and their women and so on and so forth. And they said, well, these are our laws. We're allowed to do this. And they started pointing to their guns and their cannon and said, who's going to stop us, right? And that people that they're oppressing, in that case, the Native Americans, they went in, they started taking some of their people back, some of their food back, some of their stuff back. Okay, who's more in the wrong? Regardless of what the law says, in reality, the oppressor group is more in the wrong. Okay, it's basically that simple. Now, there's other things to consider more than just whose stuff it is, but in a nutshell, at face value, the oppressor group would be the one in the wrong, either way. Not just more in the wrong, but the one in the wrong. When people don't admit these things, okay, it causes all kinds of trouble. That's part of why white supremacy is considered the most toxic philosophy on the planet. In popular culture at least. It's because they're the main people who are robbing the planet, and they don't admit what they've done. And quite often they try to point to the Jews, right? That's like white people saying, well, it's just the French during colonialism, right? It's not logical. And they didn't even accurately define what a Jew is and isn't. Yes, the three main groups are white Jews and LGBT people. Okay? But to pretend that white people aren't a huge part of it is retarded. Okay. So again, if people cannot even do this basic math and live by it, then they are dumb and evil. Point number four, hoarding money is like being at a birthday party and being told to take a fair slice of cake and instead carving a huge slice for oneself. Even if you get away with it, it is evil, petty, toxic, pathetic, and just unbelievably stupid. If you ever grow up, you're going to look back at that and say, what the hell were you thinking? And quite often, people who became rich say when they're like 70 years old. Still, when they get to their deathbed, they look back at it and think to themselves, more often than not, what were they thinking? They should have done the right thing. Okay? And a lot of people try to pretend that, you can get rich fair and square. There's no such thing. Okay? You're not Jesus. You people cannot get rich fair and square. Not in this system, not on this planet. Okay? 25,000 people starve to death every day. You think it's moral and fair and just and right to hoard money? Why they do? Only an idiot, only a monster would think that. Only a monster. And people who want to cite, oh, those aren't our values. First and foremost, before this is a capitalist country, it's a country where the Constitution is supposed to be the highest secular law in the land. And everyone with sense are supposed to put universal pinpointed moral precision, right? They're supposed to put universal pinpointed moral precision over the Constitution. So it's stupid to point to something as superficial and subjective as capitalism and say that's our values, right? Being a greedy worm is our values and this, and this, okay? And to throw out the Constitution, which gives someone the right to complain, which gives someone the right to be here and to complain about corporate greed. The people who don't get that are dumb. That's why we have to agree on these things as a society. They're taking advantage that people don't agree on these things and they don't live like they agree on these things, okay? And all hell proceeds from there. And of course, hell in the spiritual realm is much worse, but you get what I'm saying. Okay, point number 5. We must agree that trying to force people into any culture other than universal pinpointed moral precision is wrong. No nation on the planet is insisting on universal pinpointed moral precision. Okay, so the things that they're trying to force people to do are wrong. And that's like 1 + 1 = 2 here. Point number 6. We must agree that people should date using a moral scale and that they should be mature, or that people shouldn't point out their faults, etc., so that others do not make the same mistake. Okay. Might have said that wrong here. So we must agree that people should date using a moral scale and that they should be mature. And if they're not, people should point out their faults, etc., so they don't lead others astray, right? So others don't make the same mistake. That's what I meant to say there. Okay, so basically, some people will say, well, that's not your business. We're going to date how we want to date. That's problematic for many reasons. For those of you who are confused, we'll call it point A. We live in a society where people are led astray by corporations, by religious institutions, by political groups, by groups that call themselves spiritual, like light workers and New Age people, who get in their head and they cause them to date in a way they otherwise wouldn't. When that is happening, it is clear cut that it's everyone in society's business what scales are being used, generally speaking, for example. Okay, it's of the utmost concern. You got people who are basically in corporate cults and groups like that who are getting in people's heads. It's gotten so bad that, they're actually in cults these days to a large degree. There are like really millions of people in cults in America, depending on how you define a cult. There's really millions of them. And the government is overseeing it, the governing class. It's way out of hand. They're not dating with a moral scale. They're basically dating with a cult scale, a social norm fanatic scale, a fanatic religious scale, okay? If your religion has you dating, Jabba the Hutt or Freddy Krueger, somebody who's universally moral should say, hey, what the hell's wrong with you? Why are you using that scale? It's pretty straightforward. And if your religion has you taking part in the process of sabotaging people and say, hey, that poor person looks evil to me. He looks like an angry red savage or something. And then you date some white oppressor. Okay, people should tell you about yourself. Pretty straightforward. And I'm not saying all white people are oppressors per se, okay, in this video. But I am saying that that's a huge part of it. The biggest problem I see in dating today is white supremacy, Jewish supremacy, LGBT supremacy. It is this corporate push to get people to date with a scale of playing stupid about the reasons people are poor while dating toward people with higher social status, quote unquote, who are rich oppressors, their allies. That's the biggest problem. It's a bigger problem than rape. Most people, when they're raped, a lot of times it's just one time. He's raped on a date or something, they never see that guy again, boom. These females get tricked into bed, into marriages, where they keep having sex with these monsters, and then that's the reason there's a 50% divorce rate. Okay, it's very difficult to even point to a single valid marriage on this planet. You got to know who my parents are. Every other marriage is basically invalid. Now, we don't have to agree on that right there, per se. That takes some thinking to get there. But these points that I'm talking about here, we do. Okay. Point number 7. We must agree that the school system is broken because of white, Jewish, and LGBT supremacy and token minorities helping them, which is why so many people turn to gangs, drugs, and even worse, fanatic assimilation. Now, when you look at the school system, right, it's not preparing people to really be prepared to face the world, to make sound decisions, to budget and maneuver effectively, to think effectively. They're not being taught to critically think. And the job market is not being structured to receive people to an optimum level. After you go around the world and sabotage the world as developed nations, can you then turn around and say, well, our economy is bigger than theirs? So what? Can Tanya Harding, after she cripples Nancy Kerrigan, turn around and say, well, I skate better than her now? So what? You fucking saboteur, so what? Okay, so on that same point, we should agree that the government should plan to spend at least $600 billion in the next 3 or 4 years, building at least 6 million affordable housing units, okay, and units to end homelessness. Now, you can build more than that if you build it with you build tiny homes in places that are cheap to build, put about 100 tiny homes on, you could probably get up to 7 or 8 or 9 million units, depending on how many tiny homes you build, maybe even better than that. Okay. In fact, if you did all in tiny homes, you get it way up there, right? Over 12 million, really. But they need to agree on a logical plan that everyone's comfortable with, that makes sense, that's fair and just and right. Okay. Pretty straightforward. You can pay for it easily with wealth taxes. I have various war on poverty plans that more than solve the issue. Okay. Even if you just took it from the top 50% flat out, okay, $600 billion is a drop in the bucket compared to the $162 trillion in wealth that they have. Okay, it's nothing. They hardly miss it kind of thing. But yet they won't do it because they want a slave system. Which goes back to, we have to start off by agreeing on these fundamentals and building on them in a way that's fair and just and right. Or you get nowhere. If you all agree on something stupid, like people often do, you go a stupid direction. Look at MAGA. Look at the Democratic Party these days, Republicans these days. Look at all the political parties you have these days. They agree on something stupid and they get nowhere, and the other parties and their stupid ideas mix together with theirs, and it's just a catastrophic fail. Okay. Point number 9. We must agree that the general population has more sense than the government, and that they should vote on whether or not to cancel Trump's tax cuts for the rich, and to instead pass a global farming program, affordable housing plan, and a national farm program plan. See my cake example. Some of you say, well, America first, when you have $162 trillion, okay, just stacked up in wealth. And for like $1 trillion, you could start off for $1 trillion, you can make a massive farming program that really could be self-sustainable after that, how much it would help the economy. When you think about how much it would help the economy. And for $600 billion, right, for a mere 1.6, we can solve like the major problems here in America, and kind of, securing Social Security and healthcare and so on. It's a walk in the park. Okay. The major kind of secular problems, kind of world problems of this world, not spiritual problems, the story for another day. And then, a global farming program, okay, just $180 billion a year from America, and commitments from other developed nations and rich people all over the world. So why wouldn't you feed them? Because you want to have a nice big slice of cake while people starve? Think of the whole world as like a birthday event. You want people to starve to death while you have a big piece of cake and you have a hat on that says America on it. So you go, yeah, cool. Right, stupid. You may as well put a propeller on that. It's stupid. A dunce cap. Tweedledee, Tweedledum, Dumb and Dumber. It's stupid. So the bottom 50 have 2 to 4 trillion in wealth, while 9 million people starve to death in the world a year. Okay, so you have 162 trillion in the top 50% and 2 to 4 trillion in the bottom 50%. And when people are hungry here, in almost every place here, unless you're in the middle of nowhere super tough or something, there's things you can do to get something to eat. These people who are starving to death, they're in places where no one helps people out when they're hungry. They just starve to death. It's sad that people need to be told that because they're so selfish, they're so self-deluded, so self-absorbed. Point number 10. People who aren't mature enough to put true and universal morality above sadism and trying to feel important shouldn't be in charge. Again, people who aren't mature enough to put true and universal morality above sexual sadism, what have you, and trying to feel important shouldn't be in charge. The word mate is scrambled into the word mature. And you get this trickle down in maturity, and people are dating like bitches, frankly. So we have to agree on these 10 points, these 10 foundational points, or you get nowhere. And this is to solve the problems, that are basically problems of this world. This is not going to bring you to heaven per se. It's not going to help you cure your soul. Okay? This is to solve the problems like the economy, okay, crime, what have you. Okay? So I would add to this that they should look at my war on poverty plan, which comes with hiring more police officers all over the nation. It comes with job programs, temporary job programs for people who are, dying for drugs and they don't want to go to rehab. They can go do a half an hour job or something, get $10-15, do an hour job, get $20. We can tailor things for them like that. Okay, tailor things like that for them. Now they're making it harder for me to speak because they know damn well that I'm right about this. I challenge every economist on the planet who disagrees to a debate in regards to whether these ideas should be implemented and whether it creates a better economy than the economy that's being created right now on the trajectory we're on. Okay. If you think you can do better, by all means, put your plan forward. I would love to hear it. I don't have all the answers in terms of the economy. But when it comes to the essence of being a good economist, what really makes someone the best economist, I'm the best. Thank you.